Hi everyone, my name is Tanvi. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for being here on a Thursday evening. What I'm hoping to give you today is a quick walkthrough of what it is like to be a product manager in a marketplace business, how I got here, and if I have time towards the end, I'll walk you through some prep interview questions if you yourself would want to be a PM or interview as a PM in a marketplace business. All right, so product managing marketplace businesses. What are marketplace businesses? What is unique about product managing them? How do you identify a product manager in a marketplace business? And then some of the key tech components of what that entails. Let me start by telling you a little bit about myself. So I was born and brought up in India. I moved to the East Coast of the US to study computer science at Bryn Mawr College. After doing that, I had to start a bug. I really wanted to work in the gig economy space. TaskRabbit was just starting out in the US, and I decided I wanted to move to India to try and do that for Mumbai. So started a company called Chachi.com. Did that for a year, built the marketplace from the ground up, recruited a bunch of service providers, did a ton of fundraising, built the website, but then realized I was all of 22 and didn't know what I was doing. So it was fun for a year, but then I decided I needed a paycheck. Moved back to the US where I did PM at Microsoft, kind of fell into it by accident, but it was kind of a perfect fit from the get-go. I started out on the Windows team, built Windows 8, worked on the browser, then moved to Microsoft Research, where I worked on machine learning tech for language. So I worked on translation technology. And then I decided that I needed to be back in the gig economy space, and Uber worked out, so joined the Uber marketplace team, first as a PM on their matching team. And now I'm a PM on their shared rights pricing and matching team, where I lead a bunch of pricing, matching, and experience-related efforts. So I'm hoping to share some part of the service marketplace experience with you today. A little bit about why I am personally deeply excited by marketplaces and like why I get up in the morning excited to do my job. I think we're in the golden age of service marketplace tech businesses for these three reasons. One, depth and scale of impact. I'm really compelled by the flexible employment opportunities it entails, whether you're driving a car or renting out your spare room. The flexible employment opportunity that marketplaces provide previously did not exist in our economy, and that works on the opposite side to transportation, accessibility to underserved communities, which previously didn't exist. I think both the depth and scale of impact in marketplace businesses is extremely unique to this point of time in the global economy. Number two, we are extremely at day zero of where marketplace businesses are. Uber and Lyft, for example, serve less than 1% of global transportation miles traveled in the world today. There is a lot more to go. Same for many other untapped service verticals. So I think the future potential of impact of building skill sets of growing and scaling service marketplaces is huge. And third, marketplace science. If you go to any medium to large size marketplace business anywhere in the world, it's just a bunch of crazy data scientists running extremely interesting experiments in essentially a pure snapshot of an economy of pure supply and demand. I would recommend, if people want to familiarize themselves a little bit more with marketplace economics and science, listen to the Freakonomics episode by Stephen Levitt, who wrote the Freakonomics book called Why Uber is an Economist's Dream. And he talks a little bit about why, to an economist, a platform like Uber, where supply and demand curves are in their purest form possible, and that data is extremely accessible, is super interesting as an academic. And you get to do some of that as a PM in a marketplace business, which to me personally is super exciting. So here's what I'm hoping you'll get out of today. One, I'll tell you a little bit about what a marketplace business, what a service marketplace business is. I'll double click a little bit into the key tech components, specifically matching and pricing. With ride sharing being my canonical example because that's my bread and butter, but like these generalized learnings can be transferred to other kinds of businesses. 3, what a product manager in a marketplace business looks like. And 4, if we have time towards the end, I'll do a quick mock interview. If you were to interview for a marketplace business, what kind of questions could you expect and what kind of answers the interviewer is looking for? All right, what is a marketplace business? So as simply as possible, a marketplace business is anything that takes 2 groups of people, supply and demand, or maybe 2 plus if it's, let's say, Uber Eats or DoorDash, so supply, demand, and let's say provider like a restaurant, and connects their needs and wants in a centralized fashion. So I'll be speaking from an educated point of view about Lyft and Uber, but there's eBay, Fiverr, Angie's List, Handy, even Craigslist is an example of a marketplace business. And the stuff I'm talking about today kind of encapsulates all these examples. When I think about marketplace businesses and specifically service marketplace businesses, I mainly think about 2 dimensions within which they can be divided. So my x-axis in this case is this business a matchmaker, just does connect 2 people and then leave them to conduct their business? Or is it a full stack service provider from the intent expressed all the way to service delivered? My y-axis is this a provider that just aggregates supply that already existed, or is it creating supply that previously didn't even exist? So let me take an example. Craigslist is your canonical example of something that's just a pure aggregator, just a web page with a list of links and contact information and free for all. It's simply a matchmaker. Craigslist takes no responsibility for the sketchy things you find on their platform. And you do not expect Craigslist to take responsibility for that end-to-end service. On the other end of the spectrum, let's take Airbnb or Postmates. Airbnb arguably created supply that previously didn't exist. There was no way for you to put your spare bedroom on a platform and have it rented by reliable people. So it created supply that previously didn't exist, mostly. And it's a full stack service provider. Not only do you see these listings, but you can pay for them, you can review them, you can communicate with your host. It's an end-to-end service. And at the end of the day, if you don't have a good experience with your Airbnb, Airbnb is at fault. On the other end, let's take Handy as an example. Handy is something that aggregates existing cleaning providers and is also a full stack service provider, but didn't create supply that didn't previously exist. So generally, I mean, these are just broad strokes, but generally when thinking about service marketplaces, think about dimensions in terms of how deep into service providing is this marketplace going versus just aggregating, and then is this marketplace creating supply that didn't exist, which has a completely different set of tech challenges, versus is it just an aggregator of supply that already existed? Andrew Chen, who is kind of like the pope of marketplaces, wrote this really good essay called What's Next for Marketplace Businesses? And I found his essay really insightful because he identifies these 4 chapters in where marketplace businesses have evolved over the last 3 decades. So he starts with what he calls the listing era, the Craigslist, Yelp era. Just as the internet was getting more popular and more people had access to post and add content, Craigslist and Yelp kind of grew in traction, giving people access to those platforms. But they took zero responsibility for other services associated with that listing. Then was the unbundled Craigslist era. So for example, something like Angie's List gave you a very specific, specialized listing platform, but again was not responsible for some of the other services associated with it. Then was the Uber for X era. Uber, Lyft, Airbnb are really good examples of the Uber for X era, where now we're starting to get into supply creation and not just supply aggregation. And this is where payment systems and real-time information and live location sharing, all that tech starts to click into place and gets really good. And now we're in the managed marketplace era. And I alluded before to service verticals and getting those service verticals right. The managed marketplace era is essentially all about taking a very specific service vertical. Let's take Honor as an example, which is a startup that serves senior care. So it's a network of service providers who are specifically allocated and vetted to provide high quality senior care, all the way from identifying a service provider to actually getting your service completed, to reviewing and specializations and so forth. It's not as much of a commodity as, let's say, an Uber ride is. You don't really care who your Uber driver is as long as you get from point A to point B safely. When you start getting into the managed marketplace services, you do care who is taking care of your grandparents. And therefore, there's a higher quality bar associated with it, and therefore a lot more operations muscles that are required. So again, when you think about service marketplaces, and if you're interested in kind of the evolution of technology and evolution of these business models, the Andrew Chen's What's Next for Marketplace Businesses is a great read that double clicks into some of this. So anyway, at a high level, any marketplace is going to reduce entropy between demand and supply and adding speed, quality, and reliability to that service by leveraging the power of that network. As simply as that, that is a marketplace with tech kind of powering the brain of it. So you may ask, all right, service marketplaces, no, not new news. Taxis existed for a really long time. Hotels existed for a really long time. What is the value add of putting things on a smartphone app? I like to use Los Angeles's taxi network as a canonical example of what radical efficiency that service marketplaces bring can do to a market. So pre-Uber and Lyft back in 2010, 2008, Los Angeles was doing 8.4 million taxi trips a year. Once Uber and Lyft came into the market 2012, 2013, everyone starts installing Uber and Lyft on their platforms. Taxi trips reduced down to 6 million. So you might say, okay, well, Uber and Lyft is cannibalizing the taxi business. Uber and Lyft, as of 2017, created 100 million plus trips annualized in 2017. Not only did it surpass where taxis were just a few years ago, it 10x'd that volume just by virtue of the fact that your ETAs were reliable, your pricing was structured, everything was faster than before, and you generally had some confidence with the quality control associated with your experience. So yes, while some of the taxi business was cannibalized, the 10x incrementality that this business adds to this ecosystem is just unforeseen. And that's the kind of radical efficiency that service marketplaces can bring to already existing verticals that are honestly disruptive. All right, so we talked a bunch about what a marketplace business is. Now let's double click. And let's double click into any medium to large size marketplace business and look at kind of the structure and the limbs that constitute of what makes it work. Again, I'm speaking from my Uber knowledge, but every marketplace business I have seen in the Bay Area kind of follows the same structure. So in a marketplace business, you have a few core teams. In the beginning, they are kickstarted by operations, like manually people going out on the streets and doing recruiting. And eventually they get replaced by tech, so engineers, PMs, and data scientists. So you usually have supply growth. How am I recruiting my drivers? Where am I finding them from? What is the registration process? You have demand growth. What kind of promotions can I offer? Refer a friend and get $20 off. You have a safety and quality team. How do I make sure that the people on my platform are having a safe experience? You have user experience and ops, like doing the pricing and the actual UI associated with the experience. And then each marketplace business will have kind of its heart in a marketplace team. And the marketplace team in the beginning usually is just Excel sheets with prices. But eventually, as it matures and the business grows, it becomes a powerhouse of machine learning based tech that makes really smart and really quick real-time decisions. So for example, the magic that happens when you request a lift and you get matched with someone else, or the surge price that kicks in when the market is oversupplied or undersupplied, all that happens within the marketplace team, and that tech has to mature really, really fast. Like when you're talking about 100 million ride-sharing trips annualized in Los Angeles, multiply that by 400 cities where Uber exists. So that tech has to be really resilient and really responsive because the decisions it's making is having ramifications in the real world. Look at Twitter anytime Uber goes down for like 15 minutes and you will see the ramifications of the marketplace team's tech not working. All right, so I've pitched you the marketplace team. What does this team do? The way we think about the marketplace teams is the supply journey and the demand journey. Demand in this case, in the Uber case, is the rider. Supply in the Uber case is the driver. So let's talk through the rider first. The rider first opens her app. She looks at the price. She looks at UberX, Uber Pool, Premium maybe, makes a decision based on those prices, makes a request, is on trip, and then once the trip completes, has a long-term relationship with that platform. The driver goes online when she's ready to start driving. Then once the driver is online, has to make a decision. Should I accept this trip or should I hold out for a more lucrative trip? Okay, she says yes. She's driving to the rider, is on trip, driving the rider to point B, and then has a long-term relationship with that platform. Each journey here has a piece of pricing and matching and long-term incentives tech associated with it. So it starts with supply and demand pricing. So in your shopping stage, in your online stage, you have to pitch to supply and demand with, this is how much this trip costs. So this is how much we think you're going to make in 1 hour of driving in downtown San Francisco. Then there's recommendations. I think this is where you should be driving. We think it's going to surge at this time. Maybe you should go down to the financial district. Then is the actual match. Here's a request, here is supply. How do I make the most network optimized decision? Then you kick in rebalancing mechanisms. Okay, are there too many requests? Are there not enough drivers on the street? Do we need to start surging? How much should we surge? Once the trip is over, what is your long-term loyalty and customer buyback? What kind of promotions and incentives am I offering both drivers and riders to keep them on my platform and keep them away from my competitors? And then quality control. Is this a well-reviewed driver? If the driver is getting a 2-star review, what's wrong? Should they be on my platform? Are they an unsafe driver? How do I weed out those bad experiences on my platform? And all of these usually map one-on-one to a tech team within the marketplace business. Again, at some level of maturity. So I'll double click into a few of these pieces. I'm not going to be able to speak in very much depth about each one, but I'll call out the key parts. First, I want to talk about matchmaking. The underlying principle of matchmaking a service marketplace business is matchmaking is unopinionated. It's not biased towards any one single actor on the network, and it's optimized. Now, matchmaking can be of 2 formats. Obviously, there's recommendation-based matches. So I'm going on Airbnb, I want to take a trip to Tahoe. Here are my dates, here are the number of people who are going with me. What are the top options on your network you can give me for what you think my price point is? You're getting matchmaking right is just essentially getting search right. How do I surface the most relevant search results based on past experiences on each of these platforms for this particular person to increase the probability that they will convert. To me, what's exciting is real-time matching. So I put in a request. I have 10 people, 10 drivers in a 5-block radius. Who do I match you with? What are my ETA expectations? How do I make that decision in 20 seconds? And then having the driver on the other end accept that request. I specifically call out that matchmaking has to be network optimized. And I think let's walk through an example of why it has to be network optimized. So consider the scenario on my right, which is a purely greedy algorithm, where the passenger number 1 comes onto the platform first. And she says, okay, I'm looking to go home. Give me the closest possible car. So I'm like, cool, there is a car that's 1 minute away. I will give you that car. Passenger number 2 shows on the platform 5 seconds later. Passenger 2 now wants the closest possible car, but the closest possible car to passenger 2 is this car 5 minutes away. I made the most optimal decisions for each given passenger, but if I add up all the ETAs on my network, I have an aggregate 6-minute ETA. In a network optimized algorithm, you're looking for the best possible values that minimize network level ETAs in this case. So passenger number 1 shows up first, and passenger number 2 shows up second. But instead of making greedy decisions for each given passenger at any given time, I'm looking at my network and essentially solving a giant matching algorithm across all the different nodes in that snapshot of the world. And in this case, I give 2-minute ETAs to both my passengers. Yes, passenger number 1 got 1 additional minute of waiting, but passenger number 2, her waiting shrunk by 3 minutes, giving me 4 minutes at a network level. And imagine Uber systems and Lyft systems doing this every second, every 5 seconds at citywide level. So you're solving this algorithm in very short time spans for millions of data points of drivers and riders at any given spot to make this network optimized decision. And the reason this algorithm has to be unopinionated is I cannot say, let's suppose, I really like rider 1. Rider 1 is an extremely loyal customer and she takes 10 trips a week. I want to give rider 1 a minute ETA each time. And the reason I can't do that is my rider number 2, who might be taking trip number 2 on Uber ever in her lifetime, is going to get a shitty ETA. So any kind of greedy decisions at a real-time matchmaking algorithm has a real cost associated with for all the other participants in that network at any given time. And therefore, matchmaking has to be unopinionated and network optimized. Now I want to flip to talk about pricing, because I think pricing here is equally interesting. Because remember that pricing here is not just pricing your Uber trip for the rider, but pricing here is finding that equilibrium between demand and supply. So demand in this case, the rider is saying, hey, is this the best return on investment for the dollar amount I'm giving into this transaction? Am I going to pay $8 for this trip? Is it worth it? Could I walk? Could I take the bus? Like, does this make sense? The supply or the driver is thinking, is this transaction the best return on investment for my time? I'm going to spend some time driving to the rider. I'm going to spend a bunch of time on trip. And then I'm going to be taken somewhere where I may or may not find a subsequent trip. Is this a good investment? I don't know. And you have to make that transaction by transaction level decision. So pricing in a marketplace is not simply setting prices for one part of the marketplace over another part of the marketplace. It's about finding the right price point where this trade-off makes sense so that this transaction is converted from a shopping session to a completed transaction. There are some things that kind of put their foot on the scale in one way or the other. So seasonality, for example, it's raining, it's really cold, it's snowing, demands elasticity to pay any given price is now called into question because the weather sucks. Similarly, on the supply side, there are competitors. I could be driving for Lyft, I could be delivering food on DoorDash, I could be shopping on Instacart. Is this particular platform worth my time compared to the competing options I have on the table? And of course, there are other softer things like what is the brand associated with any given platform versus what is the user experience of using this app, and all this stuff plays some weight in demand versus supply pricing. But inherently, at the end of the day, pricing has to solve that real-time decision of is this good return on investment for each side of the marketplace and finding that perfect price point. So to do that, to find that perfect price point, I need to go figure out how much things cost and then how much will people pay for something. So on the cost side, I'd like you guys to think about, let's say, an Uber pool trip you might have taken recently. So if you take a $10 Uber pool trip, you're paying the driver $10, but you don't get matched. There's no one else going in the same direction as you. You're comfortable. You're not sharing the car with anyone. No detours. That's great. From your perspective. From Uber's perspective, I paid driver 1 $10 and driver 2 $10. And I might not be charging riders that much money. If this trip were to be matched, and if I went from pickup 1 to pickup 2 to destination 1 to destination 2, instead of paying 2 drivers an aggregate $20, I'm paying 1 driver $16. In order for me to be able to set accurate rider prices for Uber Pool, I need to be able to predict that I think this trip will match. And because this trip will match, I think it's going to cost $16. And therefore, this rider is occupying half of that $16 trip, and therefore I should charge that rider $8 as opposed to $10 in an unmatched trip. Being able to have that kind of predictive power before the session is actually converted, and therefore before I can actually tell you if this trip is going to be matched, is a really important part of estimating how much something will cost and using that to set prices. The second part of using historical data to set prices is getting a sense of how much is something worth. So imagine if I was an Airbnb PM, I would start with, let's say, an A/B experiment where I say, okay, I'm going to put this home at a $250 a night price point. I have another treatment at $200 a night and a third treatment at $150 a night. What is that price point at which certain percentage of my customers start converting so that I'm not giving things away for free and I'm not taking a loss to myself, but I'm finding the right price point between how much something is worth or demand and how much something will cost, and using that to set customer prices. All right, so we talked about matching and we talked about pricing. The third part, and an extremely important part, especially for full stack service providing marketplaces, is quality control. So everyone's had that awful experience with a really rude ride-sharing driver, or a really bad experience in an Airbnb where your room smelled bad and your host wouldn't pick up their phone. And these kinds of things are sticky and stick with the reputation of the platform. So all the horror stories of like people trashing their Airbnbs or women having safety issues in ride sharing, those kinds of things stick with the brand and really hurt the reputation associated with those brands. And those are P99 cases. Obviously, those 1% of cases where something goes wrong really sticks on that brand's name. And customers associate that kind of service with the brand, even though an employee of the brand was not providing the service. So quality control mechanisms are a very critical part of informing future decisions. So for example, each platform has their favorite version of how do I call out the best performers on my platform. So you must have seen Airbnb's Superhost, or Lyft and Uber's premium drivers, like highly rated drivers, DoorDash's recommended restaurants. All of these are the platform's way of saying, hey, I trust this player on my platform and their quality, their service quality is extremely high. Here is my stamp against this person. Early on in the lifetime of a marketplace business, those things can be done manually. But at a critical mass, those things have to start being automated. So looking at driver reviews, looking at driver 5-star ratings, using that to inform pricing, matching, and then transactional decisions are really important so that that virtuous cycle of quality control continues to persist to keep your best actors in the platform and avoid situations like this so that you're weeding out the bad players as soon as these kinds of activities start to rear their ugly heads. So Uber, Lyft, Airbnb all have teams in place that are essentially running a bunch of machine learning and sending a lot of ops power behind reading reviews, quality controlling 5-star ratings, looking at drivers whose ratings have dropped off suddenly, and using that to make sure these participants are weeded out of the system before a bad incident happens. And lastly, rebalancing mechanisms. So this is the last thing I want to double click into because I think it's really interesting, which is how do we make sure in real time that the marketplace is healthy, that demand and supply is more or less balanced such that we're ensuring a certain quality of decision making. So imagine you are at a Beyonce concert at 10 p.m. at Century Field Lake. At 10 p.m., thousands of people are getting out of this concert hall, so rider requests suddenly shoot up. When rider requests shoot up, driver utilization in that neighborhood shoots up because now all the empty drivers are being sucked into Century Field Link. As soon as that starts to happen, ETAs start sucking because now you have to pull drivers from further and further away to start fulfilling those requests. When ETAs start sucking, rider requests per session start tanking. Riders start canceling. ETAs are not worth it. It's not worth their time to wait. They'd rather take the bus. It's just chaos. So rider cancellations go up, and then driver cancellations go up because the driver doesn't want to have to drive 25 minutes to that concert because he's going to spend 15 minutes finding their passenger who's probably drunk. So what unbalanced looks like is just a terrible set of cascading events that takes a healthy marketplace and in a 10 or 15 minute timeline makes it completely unhealthy because now we are just in this cycle of requests and cancels and requests and cancels, and cancellations are really expensive for the network because cancellation is essentially a driver accepting a trip, making progress towards the trip, and then 2 or 3 minutes into the trip now having to be canceled and not being paid for their effort. And that is just unhealthy for the health of the marketplace because now the driver has made progress that they were not paid for. All right, so now let's say Surge was invented. What does this identical scenario look like where Surge exists? And I want to say that Surge gets a really bad name because everyone's like, oh, Uber is surging, Lyft is surging, they're price gauging me, they just want to get more money out of me. What that kind of narrative misses is that Surge is not so much trying to get riders to pay more, but Surge is essentially a defense mechanism against an unbalanced marketplace. So let's say rider requests at 10 p.m. go up because everyone's exiting the Beyonce concert. Driver utilization goes up. Surge kicks in. So Surge looks at the real-time state of that marketplace in 10 minutes and says, okay, rider request is up. All my drivers are utilized. Something's wrong. I'm going to kick in Surge. When Surge pricing kicks in, riders' ETAs go down immediately because the number of riders who are requesting trips at those Surge prices gets dramatically cut down because willingness to pay has dropped. All right, so now Surge has kicked in. All those offline drivers who were sitting on their couch are like, oh, I got to get to Century Field Link. It's 3x Surge right now. It's going to be totally worth my time. So online drivers dramatically increases in volume. Rider ETAs still down because a bunch of these drivers have just showed up online. All right, so now rider requests per session stable because you're not seeing a ton of cancellations. Riders are coming onto the platform, looking at the price, and now deciding whether or not to convert. And now that the market has stabilized, Surge autocorrects, says, okay, now I've entered a healthy state of supply and demand. things are looking good, cancellations are looking stable, I don't need to surge anymore, I'm going to shut down. In both these scenarios, riders entered the ecosystem and completely overwhelmed it and overwhelmed the marketplace. But when surge kicks in and when surge is doing its job well, it's able to quickly, in some cases in matters of minutes, correct the state of that marketplace so that riders and drivers are able to continue to have a good experience on the platform without those P90 cases where people get like 20-minute ETAs. All right, so we've talked about matching, pricing, quality control, and surge. I would say those are the four kind of most important and key, from a technical perspective, the key challenging tech components of running a marketplace business. But now I want to flip and talk a little bit about what a PM does in the marketplace business and how is a PM adding value to a marketplace business. All right, so a typical marketplace PM is a people person. Yes, mostly. Graceful at stakeholder management is more accurate. You'll see that these marketplace PMs, the ones I've interacted with who are really successful and impressive, are 50% data scientists, like what is going on, how can I debug this issue, what experiment should I run, and 50% ops, like what do I need to do to just get down there, get my hands dirty, roll up my sleeves, and get things working again. And you want that balance of like 50% science and 50% just like execution and getting your hands dirty. A marketplace PM owns the bottom line of her business areas. You're not optimizing for features, you're not optimizing for button clicks, you're optimizing for the business unit that you're responsible for. And lastly, you can deal with local market-specific complexity. Laws and regulations in each market you have your business in look very different. How are you optimizing for tech that is as common and unified as possible, but also complies with local competitive and local regulatory requirements? So a lot of people, especially when I take interviews and prep other people for interviews, will ask me, okay, well, I've been a software PM. Can I switch into being a marketplace PM? Do I need a business degree? Here is the high-level chart I would draw for software PMs looking to interview or transition into a marketplace PM role. So as a software PM, for people in the room, and I know some of you are PMs, as a software PM, your key stakeholders are your engineers, your designers, PMs from other teams. But as a marketplace PM, your stakeholders just 10x'd. So you're looking at local ops in every market you operate in. You're talking to finance, you're talking to legal, you're talking to policy. Data scientists are your best friends, and you're constantly making sure that the decisions you're making are applicable to like the 400 markets you operate in. Software PMs are responsible for product metrics. Like, what is my conversion funnel? How many people are clicking on this page? How many sales have we clocked in, and so forth. Marketplace PMs are looking for business metrics. Like, what are my billings? What are my net inflows? What do my profitability numbers say? And what do they say at a market level? Your service area for a software PM is global. You're shifting your software everywhere in the world. And then you have localized features. So like Windows 7 looks the same everywhere, but obviously you localize the feature to that market. As a marketplace PM, your tech and your business is extremely hyperlocal, but you're building global features where possible. And again, as a software PM, you own features. As a marketplace PM, you own business verticals. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about what marketplace PMs are, and I hope I've given you guys a sense of what that entails, I want to talk briefly about a marketplace product interview scenario. How much time do I have?
You do.
I have time, okay. All right, so let's do sample question 1. And I'm borrowing from some of the interview prep I've personally done and some of the interview prep or interviews I've taken in the past at Uber. So let's walk through sample question 1. So let's say ETAs for UberX in Bangalore have suddenly shot through the roof. In the last week, you're the PM for this market. You're the PM for this ETA feature. Can you debug what's going on and come up with a remediation plan? So I'll tell you first what the bad answers sound like. So the bad answers, when they look at this problem space saying, I wonder what's going on. I wonder if our ETA models are broken, or I would look at any service outages. Are some of our servers down? What's going on? Like, they look for, bad answers look for tech solutions or tech features. A good marketplace answer will first, right off the bat, be aware that there are two sides of any given marketplace. So in the case of this ETA question in Bangalore, the first thing your head should go to is, okay, ETAs are up. Does that mean that our supply utilization has gone down? Are there fewer drivers on the streets in Bangalore this week than there were last week? If yes, why is that? If not, let's look at driver acceptance rates. Are fewer drivers accepting trips than before? If yes, then why is that? Okay, does it mean that my incentive dollars have dropped? Or have we made a change to the pricing algorithm? Or have we given out a rider promotion where our demand has 10x'd such that we've flooded the market with more trips than we were used to last week? Or has something weird happened where our matching algorithm isn't working? So instead of doing network optimized decision making, I'm making greedy decisions. Those lines of thinking indicate to me that the candidate is not just looking at this as a tech problem with an engineer hat on, but as a marketplace PM who's the business owner, aware of both sides of the marketplace and how they're interacting with one another. Second, a good answer to that question calls out the balance between network effects and unit level optimization. So when I'm looking for solutions for sample question 1, I am not looking for answers around how do I make that one ETA faster or how do I make ETAs shorter for people in that one neighborhood, but I'm looking for, at a network level, what is broken about this market that causes the ETAs to be degraded, as opposed to user level or rider level decision making. Third, talk about sustainable solutions. I think that's healthy practice in any PM interview. And 4, focus on testable hypotheses. So what can I A/B test really fast? So good answers I've seen for sample question 1 before have indicated things like, what would happen if, let's say, we made the acceptance screen on the driver app in Bangalore look a little bit different such that you could see how much money you were going to make on this trip? Would that change driver accept rates behavior? And then A/B those different screens to see if accept rates moved. So focus on very testable hypotheses that are predicated on one part of the marketplace or the other making a certain set of decisions. So let's repeat this exercise for sample question 2. So you are a PM on Waymo. Automated cars just came online. You have, as the PM, an access to a fleet of 1,000 vehicles. You're responsible for what the go-to-market plan is. How do you get these 1,000 fleets on the market? How do you convert them to a ride-sharing business? Bad answers here entail things like, I'm going to make a beautiful app, and I'm going to send all these fleets on the streets of San Francisco, and as people request cars on this app, I am going to send the closest possible car. Those are very software-centric answers. A good marketplace PM candidate starts from looking at both sides of the marketplace and essentially does a business evaluation. What are the scenarios which I want to serve with launching this product? Am I going after commute? Am I going after food delivery? Am I going after, school buses? Then that candidate picks one of these very specific use cases. Let's say we're going after commute at AM rush in San Francisco. Sounds good. 2, what are the existing solutions that San Francisco currently has for commute? And what additional value add am I adding? 3, what is the cost to serve these fleets, and am I going to be able to make the unit economics work so that each trip is priced at a certain point where I'm making money on each of these trips? 4, what is my matching and pricing algorithm going to look like? Where am I going to deploy my fleets? Where are they going to be parked so that they're quickly able to respond to requests? 5, what are my KPIs? How many requests per car? How many trips per hour each of these fleet members are going to fulfill? What are my KPIs? How do I ensure I meet those KPIs? And then kind of starting to double click into demand, then starting to look at lifetime value. How many repeat trips am I going to look for at a per passenger level? What is my price point? How do I make sure that my self-driving vehicles are always working? What happens when one of them breaks down or runs out of gas? Like, those are the kinds of considerations that are more business centric that you're looking for in a marketplace PM interview. And bad answers, and especially answers that are coming from people who are used to more classic software PM interviews, usually entail user experience or usually entail features that kind of often misses the point. All right, so I've talked a little bit about marketplace product interviews, and I'm happy to take questions later if you guys have more specific tips you're looking for about marketplace product interviews. But I'm at the end of the prepared content I have, which is, I would recommend this reading list for anyone who's interested in marketplaces. So here are the essays I personally used to prep myself for my Uber interview, and they went a really long way. In particular, I'll call out number 3, which is Alvin Roth's Who Gets What. He's a Nobel Prize winning economist or physicist, one of the two. And he's written a great book on how marketplace businesses at scale are successful.